Great. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for that warm introduction. Thank you to everyone here. I know it's early, but let's get ready to rock and roll. 1 second, just pulling up my notes here. So this is, to be honest with you guys, this is a very humbling experience for me to be invited as a keynote for the Open Education Southern Symposium. I think other open education conferences need to take notes in terms of inviting faculty members as key speakers. What we do as faculty members on the ground is very valuable. And so I think that type of work needs to be elevated and showcased at this particular level. I want to once more thank Stephanie for inviting me here, and I want to give a special shout out to Nicole Allen from Spark and Dan Williamson from OpenStax for giving me a scholarship to attend OpenCon in Berlin, Germany last year, where I met Stephanie. So thank you to everyone who made it possible for me to be here. I have to say it's been quite a crazy ride, my ride here at Open Education. If you would have told me 3 years ago I'd be doing this, I would have, number one, said, well, what the heck is Open Education? But I had no idea that the basic premise, right, of Open Ed was with me all along as a lifelong learner and as an educator. That a quality, high quality education really should be affordable and accessible to everyone, regardless of where they come from. And so I kind of want to talk about my story in terms of how I got involved in open education. Let me go ahead and notice I didn't pull my PowerPoint. It gets like it sometimes. In my keynote, I'll be talking more specifically about how open education is doing a great job of serving the underserved populations nationwide and where it still falls short a little bit. So just to talk a bit more about my story in terms of how I got into open education, I was a part of the first cohort in a program at Ohio State, a grant program called the Affordable Learning Exchange, for ALS for short. And basically that grant program incentivizes faculty members to create and or adopt open educational resources. And so once more, I was a part of the first cohort. We were kind of the guinea pigs, I guess you can say, for the grant program. It went very, very well, and to be honest with you, it's really changed my career. This grant program is a cross-campus partnership with university libraries, the Center for Teaching and Learning, and other various departments like the Office of Distance Education and e-learning. And so it's my hope that we see more grant programs like this, of course, if funding possible, so that we can incentivize more faculty members to contribute to the open movement. And the reason why I applied to this grant is because purely for altruistic reasons. I'm working with students who are really, really struggling to come up with the funds, the means to buy textbooks. Textbooks we're talking about here. Not tuition, not room and board, textbooks, something that should be easily and readily available to our students. And I'd actually like to talk about one of my students, my mentee, as I call her, Santi, her full name. Santi is a first generation college student who recently graduated from the Ohio State University. I went to Michigan, so I feel a little conflicted here. But Santi's story is just wonderful. We met 2 years ago in 2016, and the class that she was enrolled in was the class that I wrote the textbook for. And during that semester, it was actually the first semester I used the textbook in the class. And I remember she came up to me after the first day and she said, "Thank you so much for writing a textbook and for not charging students. I can't tell you how many classes I've been enrolled in where a professor will write a textbook and then, obviously have the students buy it." And so during one of our monthly kind of chats, I asked her to elaborate a bit more on the impact that open education and using an open textbook had in her college career. And so I'd like to take the opportunity right now to read her words word for word. She said that even with the financial assistance my scholarships provided, there still remained a couple of semesters where paying for books proved to be a challenge. Being able to participate in a class like Jasmine Roberts writing for strategic communication not only alleviated some stress I had about being able to afford the course reading materials, but also made me feel more confident, right, in my ability to perform adequately compared to my peers who didn't look like me and also came from economically privileged backgrounds. In Jasmine's class, everyone started on an even playing field, and the assurance that I felt because of this helped me to succeed in her course. And again, these are her words. Open education promotes equal access to quality education and levels the playing field for our students across the board, or for students across the board. I am what an open ed success story looks like. And like I said, I really, really love Santi's story because it encapsulates so much of why we do what we do, everyone here in this room. It helps students to realize the dream of obtaining a college education, a college degree. And it really is a fundamental human right. Santi, again, was the first in her family to graduate from college. With a lot of tenacity, she was able to do that. But she had to have an opportunity to do that. As the saying goes, talent in this country is evenly distributed, right? But unfortunately, opportunity is not. And I think that's where open education has a lot of promise for our students. I think it's, however, critical that we send this message out to students before they even get to our campus. And it's not even a guarantee that when they reach our campuses that they're able to even take note of our message. They might hear our message, they might not. And the reason why I think it's so critical that we outreach better to students before they reach our campuses is because of this phenomenon called the summer melt. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are aware of this, but summer melt is basically a situation where a student is accepted into a college in spring, right? But because of cost, he or she is not able to attend the first day of class during the fall semester. And these are some of the students that are affected by this summer melt phenomenon. We're talking about Black and Latinx students, students who want to attend community college, first generation students, and students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. And so when the summer melt happens, the price ticket of a college education hits students hard. Okay, and I can reflect upon my own experience. I had a roommate who, the day that tuition was due, and I was struggling with that. I was a state student, I'm from Ohio, went to Michigan. And she said, oh, today's tuition is due, right? And I'm like, okay, don't remind me because I could be just enrolled in my classes by the end of the week. And she was able to call up her father and get her tuition paid off like that. And here I am trying to figure out how to pay $8,592. So again, we're talking about students who don't come from families who have 529 savings plan to where they can pay off their tuition so easily. And there are racial disparities that we need to be aware of as well in terms of graduation and retention rates. Many of us here is not just getting these students to our campuses, it's making sure that they stay there and that they graduate within a 6-year period. So if we look here at this graph, there are, like I said, a lot of racial disparities going on as it relates to retention and graduation rates. So for white and Asian students, they finish in about 6 years, about 62 to 63% roughly. While Latinx or Hispanic students, they finish at about 46%. And then for African American students, they're only graduating at a 38% rate. But we're not just talking about racial and ethnic minorities here in terms of some of the underserved populations that open education advocates can serve. We're also talking about those who are in rural communities, right? So if we look here at this graph that is from the National Center for Education Statistics, those who are coming from rural populations face very, very unique challenges, okay? Whether that's a lack of access to technology, broadband issues, and some of these communities are ravaged with public health problems. In Ohio, where I'm from, we are really dealing and grappling with the opioid epidemic that is affecting primarily everyone, but really, really affecting our rural communities. So if we look here at this figure, of the college enrollees that we have nationwide, only about 30% of them are coming from rural communities. Compare that to those who are in the city at a 50% rate, almost 50%. And so another phenomenon that was actually recently brought to my attention that I had no idea was going on again until very, very recently. We kind of understand some of the negotiating strategies that our students are trying to do in order to come up with the funds to meet high textbook costs. But I had no idea that students are creating GoFundMe accounts, right, to come up with the means to finance their textbook costs. This screenshot here is actually from a good friend of mine. She's working with low-income students who are college-bound, and she created a GoFundMe account for one of her students. And again, this student is a part of that summer melt phenomenon that I keep talking about. So she was accepted into college the spring semester, that spring, but she's a little concerned that she might not be able to actually physically enroll in school in fall semester because of this textbook cost issue. And so I think, again, this is another avenue where open education can definitely help our students out here. And we have a lot of research that speaks to this issue. So, for example, some of you guys might have heard about a longitudinal study that was conducted out of the University of Georgia. They looked at, I believe, and some of you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, 8 large courses. And they compared courses that use traditional textbooks with open textbooks. And those students who were enrolled in classes that used open textbooks, they fared better, they performed better academically. The grades received in terms of D's, F's, and withdrawal rates actually decreased. And if you guys can see here, it's particularly prominent for Pell eligible grant students. We're talking about underserved populations. So once more, open education has a lot of promise in this area as well. And so although I believe most, if not all, open education advocates have the purest intention in ensuring a high quality education without all these structural barriers, I do wrestle with whether or not we're doing enough, right, to reach these vulnerable populations. A 2010 study published in the American Journal of Business Education found that the most powerful information source for students who are looking to apply to college is basically fostering a rapport or some type of strong relationship with a representative from the university or college. That could be a college professor, that could be a librarian, that could be an admissions officer. So I believe open education advocates need to be on the front lines of recruitment here. Some of us are working alongside with students to get this message out here, and I think that's wonderful. We have representatives from PERG here. But I feel this is an ancillary strategy to open ed outreach. It needs to be at the core of what we do in open education. How can we truly say we're helping the most vulnerable populations when we're not going into their space or making those personal and meaningful connections? And just to kind of revisit the point of OER research here, this slide here is straight from the Open Textbook Network workshop slides. And it basically is a compilation of a meta-analysis that points to the fact that students who are enrolled in OER classes, they perform just as well as students who are enrolled in traditional courses, if not better. And I think that's fine, but this data doesn't account for the diversity of student populations. It does a wonderful job of painting a broad picture of OER efficacy, but I think it's time to kind of step it up a notch and closely examine the differences of OER efficacy across various student populations. There are a few studies who have attempted to do that, or that have attempted to do that, but we need more, I recently came across an EdSurge article that speaks to this issue of disaggregated data for OER research. And the author of this particular article wrote, if OER researchers are able to show learning gains for historically underserved students, this would be even more significant, especially for institutions where low-income, adult, and students of color persist and complete at lower rates. So I really call and challenge OER researchers to take this approach when they are reporting their data and studies. And I think there are very, very important and practical reasons that make a strong case for disaggregate data. Consider how students learn, right? There are countless research studies that point to various different learning styles and variables that influence how students learn. And some of those important variables are race and culture. So race and culture are very, very prominent variables that can influence how students learn on a day-to-day basis here. So for example, in the STEM field, there's an unfortunate achievement gap between Black and white students. And yet, if we incorporate active learning strategies into those classrooms, research actually shows that we can decrease that achievement gap a bit. And the reason why active learning strategies are so effective to decrease that achievement gap is because active learning strategies foster a more inclusive environment, and they make students, for the most part, feel a little more included in the learning process. Whereas traditional learning strategies promotes individual hard work, which could make students of color already feel more isolated in the learning process. Also, when we're talking about rural students, compared to those who are from the suburbs, teaching strategies that focus on the actual learning process, like metacognition strategies, for example, actually enhance performance for rural students. And for African American students, it's shown that those students value creativity, and freedom of expression. So these are just some of the variables that, again, I think OER researchers need to account for when we're talking about OER advocacy. So not only do we need to consider the nuanced approach approach on OER research in terms of diverse students, we need to also consider it for faculty members. So on the one hand, I think the broad notion of openness has the potential to dismantle how whiteness as a structure is written into the script of academia, particularly the open access model and how it challenges the traditional academic journals and its peer review process. I really do believe that openness can, again, challenge that very patriarchal white way of assuming knowledge, assuming value to knowledge. I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. So if we look at the peer review process in itself, a small minority of researchers are handling and controlling this process. And if we look at the editorial boards, okay, who makes up the editorial boards of a lot of our academic journals, they tend to be white and or cisgender men. Okay? And so if you think about that, it's that perspective that's used as the metric for validity. And I think that the open access model has a lot of potential to disrupt that traditional academic way of peer reviewing literature. So it's also the hope of some of us that faculty consider serious ways to open, right? By contributing to open materials or even sharing their work with the public. I know as someone who teaches at a public institution, it literally makes no sense to me that if I publish an academic article, that the public cannot access that article because they don't have a subscription to it. And yet, that same research could be funded by federal and state funds that's, contributed by taxpayer dollars. But I do understand that there is a deeper issue at hand with faculty members' hesitation in sharing their work publicly. So this past May, I actually wrote an EdSurge article that talks about the lack, in my opinion, the lack of faculty member thought leaders in the open education movement. And one of the interviewees for the article, Dr. James Skidmore from Waterloo University, stated that he actually knew a professor who didn't want to post his materials in an open context because he was afraid that if an error was to be caught, that would affect his reputation. And I just want to quote what Dr. Skidmore said. He stated, "The fear of sharing has been drilled early on in our careers, and faculty members are so cognizant of being ranked and rated and looked over that it's affecting our ability to share what we know to the public." And so I really want us to remember when we ask faculty members to openly license their work, or even share their work openly at an open level, I should say, you're asking them to be at a level of vulnerability that they might not be prepared for, and they're very, very uncomfortable with. And then also, if we're taking an even more nuanced approach to sharing openly, it's not a homogenous process. There are perceived and real risks that are even greater for faculty of color. There's an increasing amount of faculty members of color who are aggressively attacked for simply doing their work, calling out the very systems that breed inequality, inequity, and discrimination. So for example, Dr. Stephen Finley, Pico Gray, and Lauren Martin recently authored an article discussing the particular vulnerability that faculty of color face in doing their work, especially if they write about or they research race-related issues or talk about such topics in the classroom. So in my classes, we hold a daily news discussion, and given our political climate, politics, and race comes up often. And I do feel like I have to kind of walk on eggshells because of this particular climate. But getting back to the point, what's even more disheartening is that sometimes these faculty members come against a lack of support from university administrators that fail to support them in situations like this. So we appear to live in a society where identity politics are frowned upon, and one that is so eager to suppress conversations about institutional racism and replace them with post-racial narratives and personal responsibility success stories as solutions to current inequities and inequalities. This creates a particularly hostile environment for scholars who are doing amazing work in the topics of race and ethnicity, for instance, many of which are faculty of color and women. In other words, professors of color are doing sometimes, or are sometimes under bodily threat for simply just doing their job. Echo chambers or echo chamber platforms create and incite what I call, or what other scholars of color call, virtual mobs, who in extreme cases send violent threats to professors of color and their loved ones. And these incidents have happened at universities like Texas A&M, Boston University, and even at my respective university at Ohio State. So the next time you ask a faculty of color to openly license their work, please be sensitive to their hesitation, given the particular precarious situation that Open could unintentionally put them in. So I kind of just want to end here to acknowledge that we are doing a lot of great work in open education in terms of serving our underserved populations. But there's still a lot more work that we need to do in this particular field. Open education truly is what brought me and Santa together, and that's one of the reasons why I believe so strongly in the basic premise. I'm going to go ahead and end right there, and thank you so much for your time, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
So any questions for Jasmine? What was the name of that study that you had mentioned is going on?
It's called on affirming our values. Doctors Stephen Finley, Pico Gray, and Lori Martin. Yes.
So you talked about the need to engage more faculty voices.
Yeah.
What are some steps that people in this room can take to help lift up faculty voices, especially faculty?
Yes. So I think attending faculty meetings would be extremely advantageous. Having one-on-one meetings with faculty members as well, and showing and showcasing those faculty champions so that faculty members don't feel like they're the first to do this. I'm not gonna lie, when I again came into Open, I was very, very scared because I felt like I was one of the first in my department. I was the first in my department to do this. Now, luckily, at Ohio State, we are undergoing a huge cultural change, I would say, that makes it a bit more accepting to engage in this type of work. But if you do have any other faculty members who are doing this in their respective institutions, or who are doing this at comparable institutions, I think it's extremely, extremely important to highlight those individuals as well. Yes.
I'm a pre-tenure faculty member, and sometimes I'm really hesitant to try out new projects. Luckily, my department is very supportive, as my university is using and implementing work with OER projects, and I enjoy Little Rock.
Right.
So one of my questions and my concerns is that I'm trying to experiment with OER and try to develop OER materials.
Yeah.
How do you leverage that for your tenure portfolio? Because it does take a lot of time. And sometimes if you're trying out new things, students might not necessarily be really receptive to what you're trying out. And so I feel like in some ways I'm answering for it, but sometimes it doesn't really pan out. It takes up a lot of time.
Yes.
So how would you suggest one might incorporate these things to help it come towards
Yeah, so that's an awesome question. That's a question that I hear a lot from faculty members. And so basically what you're saying is that you have adopted OER in your classroom, or you're planning to? Okay, so you have. And how was that experience overall? It was time consuming for you?
Well, in graduate school, I participated in the development of programs, so it's part of the assignments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then now you're on your own and developing OER projects takes up a lot of setup and prep. And then, so just the time and whether it should be valued or how it should be valued when you're talking about faculty output.
Yeah, that's a huge institutional barrier. So I think it's easy for someone like me who is non-tenure, so I'm a lecturer at Ohio State. It's easy for me to do this type of work because I'm not like you where I'm about to go through the tenure process. And so I know there are a lot of universities that are trying to re-examine the tenure process, but that is going to take years to change and to take place. So what you're addressing is a huge institutional barrier that we need to examine that unfortunately I don't have a concrete answer for because it is so institutional and is so case by case for each particular university. I would say to continue, however, to use OER in your classroom because the data shows that students love this. They really, really do. They love that you can customize it to their learning experiences, to their real world experiences. So I would not adopt OER in the classroom. But in terms of curation and that counting towards tenure and promotion, that is an issue that a lot of us are grappling with and that we're trying to examine in terms of that counting towards T&B or T.
So you mentioned the efficacy of OER.
Yes, sir.
Materials. Could you speak to exactly how they have more efficacy over traditional textbooks?
How what?
There's more efficacy over traditional textbooks.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the efficacy part comes into play because one, we're with OER, we're eliminating that cost barrier, right? So if you're using a traditional textbook and students have to pay anywhere from $50 to $100, for some students they have to wait for that check, that refund check, for example, to come in, and so that delays the process. They're not as prepared for exams that might take place in the next 3-4 weeks. So OER makes it possible for students to have the course materials on day one and that they're prepared for that exam, for that quiz. And so that's why we're seeing a higher level of efficacy going on there. And then also, if you're using OER, not just replacing it with a traditional textbook, you're actually trying to customize that textbook to your respective region and your students. Research shows that students learn better when they have examples that are relevant to them. So I think that's another case for OER and how the efficacy part comes into play, the higher efficacy part comes into play. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a comment. First, I was going to answer something similar to your question. Is at least in the library, some students, like you said, at the very beginning of the course. So I would say if you could at least for the first 2-3 weeks, that's something that's really
Right.
That would really help them because we see some of these students coming having a and they're like, if you don't have something that's on clear for them, it's like math points, you can really see they're struggling a lot of times.
Yeah.
They will say, well, I just don't think I can, so that's really an option to maybe do that. But my comment would be, this needs, like the OER thing, has huge potential as far as critical independence pedagogy.
Yes.
I see it as more of impacting things as opposed to the traditional banking learning period where like we just fill them with information and here it's giving them the opportunity to find, like you said, active learning and then customizing it and giving them their own like specific examples really does give you realistic.
Yeah. And I don't know if this speaks to efficacy, but in my own classroom, I have, like I said, I have daily news discussions. And there was a student who gave an amazing example of a class concept that I talked about with the previous class. So I actually incorporated that in real time into the textbook. I edited, I changed it, and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm contributing to this literature. So when we're using OER in a way that is innovative, we're no longer viewing students as these knowledge buckets, right? We're viewing them on a more horizontal plane where they can contribute to the literature. And you can't really do it as much in terms of customizing that, incorporating those student examples in a traditional textbook. So, but again, I don't know if that speaks to the advocacy component. Yes,
Jasmine, do you know any open multidisciplinary journals that focus on supporting work by scholars of color or articles that touch on research around diversity and inclusion and culture and ethnicity?
so you're saying
I have an open mission to do so.
I could be very wrong, but I don't know of any off the top of my head. But again, it could be because I wasn't exposed to that, so unfortunately, I don't. Which I think is a great, thing to do and, something to bring attention to, but no, I don't.
Yes, time for maybe one more question. Okay, well, if
there's no more questions, then let's give Jasmine a round of
Thank you
applause.
so much.